Hello, everyone. We are live. The ASPE YouTube Collab episode 3 is underway. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm really excited for this. As you can see, we have a bunch of new lovely faces in the show here. So we're gonna let everyone introduce themselves, and we have another guest joining us. So there'll be 4 introductions. So Kathy, Jim, Stephanie, and Franch, would you guys mind introducing yourselves in that order?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's Kathy Devine. I'm from Australia, and I run a channel called Autie Talk, and I'm a peer mentor to people with autism, and I'm also studying counselling at the moment with the idea of focusing on late diagnosed women in the autistic community.
Very nice. I'm sure you've gotten really far with that, and will continue to go far. I see a lot of stories on your Instagram about like interviews and all that. So congrats.
Yeah. Hi everyone.
Hi Franch. We're gonna get to Jim and Stephanie, and then the floor is all yours.
Hey Stephanie. She's my friend.
Would you mind telling us about yourself, Jim?
Yes, I am Jim, and I have my son, JJ. He's autistic. I'm non-autistic. I'm a dad, and I do a blog for JJ called JJ's Autistic Journey. And it's just his daily life, you know. There's other people telling stories, and you know, JJ's story is worth telling, I thought. So we're going ahead and tell his story to the world on YouTube and Facebook. So that's what we do. You want to say hi to everybody, JJ? Say hi. Say hi.
Hi.
There you go.
Hi, JJ.
Awesome. Oh. Saying hi. Look, she say hi to you. Wave to her.
Hi.
There you go.
All right, Stephanie, would you mind giving yourself an introduction?
Hello, my name is Stephanie. I run the channel Stephanie Bethany. I'm a late diagnosed autistic person. I was diagnosed at 23, considered level 1 or whatnot. And basically, I just talk about autism related topics from my perspective, and usually, unless if it's completely opinion, research based as well. So yeah, that's what I do.
Fantastic. And Stephanie is the star of the show here, so to speak. 17,000 subscribers. So she knows what she's doing, and we're in full support of you, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Franchfries, you have the floor. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your channel.
Hey. Of course, I have to be late to the meeting, so sorry.
It's all good.
So my channel is called Neurodivergent Franchfries. It was originally called actually French fries with Asperger's. So I thought it was funny, but I don't think a lot of people got it. But anyways, I also talk about my journey as an autistic woman. And I'm not an autistic woman, but I feel like I'm such a minority, and especially in the US, because I'm Hispanic, I'm a woman, and I'm autistic. So I'm like, you know, and I'm a Hispanic woman that didn't even grow up in this country. So it's been really, really hard for me to fit in this country. I also have, like, I'm going to be talking about my entire journey since, you know, how I grew up living in Mexico, very, you know, with the, you know, certain, you know, conservative, you know, upbringings and stuff like that. And just a lot of things that I went through, dealing with depression, dealing with a lot of things. So it's been a really crazy journey that I've been through. So I want to bring that and share that, you know, with a lot of other people that might find themselves in similar situations, dealing with not only depression, but drugs, and, you know, being homeless, and just feel like really out of place, right? As well as mix it with a lot of informational things that I have found that just everything to do with the spectrum pretty much, and other comorbidities in the neurodivergence world, like ADHD, dyspraxia, dyslexia, like all those things.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's important to raise awareness about all that stuff, like not just about autism. So it's great that you're doing that.
Thank you.
All right, well, we have a really good show here today. We're going to talk, basically the concept is going to be talking about society and what we think of it and how society thinks of us. So the order that is going to go in is going to be Brandon, then Kathy, then Jim, then Stephanie, and then Alan, and then Franchfries.
Can I ask one thing? How come your camera is not showing?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I was going to mention that. My camera is not working for some reason. Yeah, it's all good though. I'll do the best. I'll show my emotion through my voice. And I think I'm doing that right now. You know,
Okay.
people with autism in general, we have a lot of potential energy and we can use that. And I'm using that here today. So let's go. All right, so here's the first question. What do you think is the biggest misunderstanding by the neurotypical society about this condition? We're starting off with Brandon.
All right, so this is a big topic. I like these discussions in general, but I think the biggest misunderstanding with the neurotypical society is that we are stupid, we are incompetent people, capable of doing tasks that I guess neurotypical people would be assigned with, meaning working out in the world, trying to make a living, functioning, supporting yourself. People literally think that we can't support ourselves, which is just entirely untrue. And like I've spoken of many times, there's this misunderstanding in society that we're unemployable. And this reflects in our unemployment rate, 86%. I'm going to hammer this down every single time. It's despicable, it's disgusting, and it needs to be addressed adequately.
It absolutely does, and I'm very passionate about justice on the employment end of things. Me and Brandon both are. I mean, it's going to be an incredibly long process, but I think we can get there. So thank you for that, Brandon. What are your thoughts, Kathy?
Roxy,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I totally agree about the employment thing. And I'm also I'm studying counseling, but I'm also really keen to become a career counselor and also work with employers doing advocacy, because this is the #1 issue facing the autistic community is employment. And I'm super passionate. So I'm really glad that, we're all together on this, and across the world, we're going to try and make, changes there. The other thing I would add is when you're with the question, I think it's still very much thought to be a male condition and a condition that's in childhood. And both of those things are obviously stereotypes, because there are girls and women on the spectrum, and it's a lifelong condition. It's not something that ends at the age of 18. So I do think more support for adults, especially late diagnosed adults.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that, and I think it actually likes to get more, because after you're 18, you become with all these stressful situations.
That's what,
and that makes it even worse.
That's right. That's
so,
right.
Yeah. Jim, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, doing this blog and just going out with JJ, you can see people looking at us like, what's wrong with your kid? Control your kid. You get that vibe from people. So people are just not educated. I believe that there's a lot of good people, but there's a lot of mean, judgmental people out there in the world.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the problem too, is they're so judgmental, and they see somebody without hearing the story, without knowing the person, behind the behaviors or whatever, or reasons. And just education, basically. So yeah, so that's what we try to do. I just try to show JJ and his life, how he is, and hopefully we get people to fall in love with him, because he's just such a sweetheart. He's got such a loving personality, and we just love him to pieces. He's a beautiful boy. I mean, he has aggression issues, but and when people see that, it's that's where they think, what's going on. Yeah, and so, you know, with the medicines that JJ's currently taking in his new school, it's turned him around so much, you know. So he's doing a lot better, not as aggressive, or when he does have aggressions, it's not as severe. So it's just a lot of education for people, really, basically, you know, to get to know somebody with autism, and, you know, hug somebody with autism. That's what we do.
Awesome.
What do you usually tell people when they say what's wrong with your kid?
Oh, goodness. They haven't said it to my face, but you know, you
Okay.
see people looking at you, you know what I mean? They're
Right,
like
yeah.
looking at you like what is wrong with him, you know? But if somebody did say that, I'd say, you know, I'd tell them to please just get educated on autism. He has autism, you know, understand it before you judge, you know, or, you know, that's basically what it is. That's what I would tell them.
I would say
I'm a very calm person, you know. I don't get mad easy. Like my wife, she gets really mad, but you know, I'm more easygoing, you know.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of haters that come on our blog too, that say mean, terrible things. So
Yeah, it's horrible.
yeah, it just, you know, I learned that's just how you just got to deal with it, and hopefully just put educational stuff out there for people to see, you know, as well as just seeing how JJ is.
Well, it's really interesting how lame someone's life has to be to make fun of other people, right?
Terrible,
just like
yeah.
they're bored. I mean, all I see is like a teenager and his dad having a great time, like every single video. That's all I see.
Yeah, he's a quarantine now. Wow, my quarantine-ager.
Quarantine-ager, yeah.
Yeah.
I put on the quarantine 15, but we're gonna get past that.
There you go. Yeah.
So, Stephanie, what are your thoughts on this issue?
Oh yeah, I think like like maybe on a broader sense, I think when people think like autism, it's like this immediate exclusion. Like autism immediately excludes this person from understanding me, from wanting to be doing the same things that I want to do, from participating in life, whether that is, you know, through workplace or just enjoying others. And it's like this, like, oh, they have autism, like and it's just kind of like, whether, you know, there's some people who will like be judgmental, but a lot of people, it's like this you know, like, I don't want to deal with that, I don't know how to deal with that, so like I'm not going to bother, you know, not going to bother engaging. And so it really is like an exclusion by default. I think that the NT society tends to view autism, and it kind of leads to a lot of problems. Even like the most well-meaning people, they just feel like it's just too much to try to engage, and they don't really want to, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And I will say, like, from someone on the spectrum, it does take a lot to fully learn about this. So, I mean, I don't sympathize where they're coming from, but I do understand it. Alan, how you doing, man? What do you have to say about this? What's the biggest misunderstanding that society has?
I think it's basically people who don't understand autism and are not educated, and they just be nasty, and it's all stuff like that, really. And you know, they see someone like with autism having a meltdown, and they're like, "What the hell's wrong with him or her?" You know, what's wrong with them? You know, by being like this, and you know, I'm sorry to use the word, but you know, call them spastic or something like that, and retard, and you know, be nasty like that. You know.
Well, I don't think that word has been used regularly since like the 60s. I think we've done a pretty good job at abolishing that. But yeah, I agree that word still exists, and yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for that. French fries, what do you have to say?
Okay, let me unmute. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yep.
Okay. So, okay, repeat the question again.
Yeah, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding by the neurotypical society about this condition?
Oh man, I feel like that's a very complicated question actually, because I've been constantly, that's kind of like a question that's constantly in my head. Like I
Mhm.
know the answer to, just don't know how to explain it, because I feel like even the community alone don't really fully understand. You have to understand the history of autism, you know, how it all started. And it all started with confusing ideas of it. So that's why to this day it's so confusing. People don't know, is it a disease? Is it a serious, you know, disorder that you develop? You know, is it a, to me personally, I just think that being autistic is a different type of brain. Just how you can, be like, you know, like a lefty and stuff. Just how you can be, you know, ADHD. What's another example? Just how you can be like, let's say, an avant, for example, or even homosexual people. Like I know that some people are conservative, they don't believe this, but by experience, I know that they have a different type of brain. So it's not that they were, you know, like homosexuality is not considered a disorder. It's not considered like, oh, I have homosexuality. It's I am a homosexual. So it's by default, by nature. And in my psychology class, something that I learned is that it is proven that homosexual people have a different type of brain. They have a different amygdala, and they have a different wiring. So that's why they act different. It's not like they develop something and then they have the homosexual disorder and stuff like that. So the same thing goes with autism. Just it presents differently in everyone. Like the wiring can just go so many ways, right? There's just so many combinations of it, and it all has to do with genetics, or how your family tree is, and that kind of like causes the combination to be, you know, that way. And then there's subsets and comorbidities too that get into the mix that make you the type of autistic that you are. So I think that's the way I see it, because that's the way I feel it. I never felt that, I just felt that the way I think of things and the way I process things has just always been so different for other people, which makes me react differently. But other people don't see it that way. And also the way psychology has been formed, which is kind of like what really pulls the strings here, right? How the psychology industry has been formed has been a way that like anyone that falls outside this, you know, this line that we have, where like this expected behavior of humans, has by default has to be a mental like disorder, or a mental illness, or something that needs to be cured, needs to be treated, which is kind of like the history of psychology. Like the intention of pretty much like the psychology industry, at the end of the day, it's a business, you know, it's not something that people do for free. I mean, you could get help for free in many places, but at the end of the day, the root of it is to make money off of people's, you know, some of it is really good, because like we all, to in one way or another, develop depression, develop things like this, you know, and getting cognitive therapy, like for example, like social or, you know, sometimes certain medications can really help, just help us treat certain things to just not get too, how do you call it, just pretty much treat it and be able to feel better and stuff like that, and control our chemical imbalance and just all the things that are going on in our brain on a regular basis that sometimes we can't control. But then like they start wanna treat a lot of other things, that patients are judgmental for the most part many times, and then your brain's natural way of being is, and it ends up seeing like, oh, you're not supposed to act this way, so we're going to give you this medication, we're going to give you this treatment that's going to stop you from acting this way. And sometimes it's, you know, acting this way has nothing wrong with, you know, there's nothing wrong with this, you know, like, you know, stimming or doing a lot of behaviors, they're, you know, they hurt no one. But because they look weird by default, you know, society wants to like stop that. and see it as like, it needs to be treated and it needs to be changed and it needs to be, you know, all these things like ABA therapy and stuff like that. So that's the thing that there's been so many years of this mentality being, you know, brought up to people and to society in general, starting from the psychology industry, that autism just falls into the slits as just one more disorder, one more mental illness, pretty much. And a lot of people see it that way, especially in some cases of the people that are, you know, they have some other traits being very intense echolalia, or very intense like other things. And people see it like, oh, you know, something must be really wrong with, you know, that kid, or my kid, you know, my kid, something's really wrong with him. We need to cure him. We need to cure him. Like, you know, like autism is because like, we need to cure him from the autism that is taking my child away. So that's how they see it. And that's the narrative that's been sold a lot to a lot of people, because people get more scared for, you know, they put these extreme cases of like, yeah, you know, like this autism is destroying our lives, and people get really scared. And that's the narrative that has been sold to the majority, unfortunately. So when I go out into the world, and every time I say, oh yeah, I have an autistic channel about autism and blah, 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 or anything autism, they're like, oh, so do you know somebody that you know, has autism?
Oh, boy.
So ask me. And I'll be like, yeah, I'm autistic. And everyone, I don't know why everyone always answers with the same thing. They're like, oh, I would not think that, you know, I wouldn't not think, you know, you don't look autistic. You know, they always say that. And they always ask me the question, do you know somebody with autism? Like, I don't know why they always ask that, but they always ask me, do you know somebody who's autistic, or how did you get into autism? I said, that's a very, very taboo type of like branch to talk about. You know, like you gotta be some kind of like doctor expert or something in order to talk about autism. They don't know that they don't know there's a community. They don't know there's people like us, and there's, you know, and they can look. To me, I'm like, I don't know why would people just, I guess me just talking to them over, you know, 2 minutes interview, or like my clients and stuff like that, they'll just assume like, oh, well, you can communicate perfectly fine, you know, therefore you cannot be autistic, or I never think autistics could speak like you. And it's just like, I get it, you know, because either autistics have noticeable difficulties with speech, or they speak very too proper, like little robots and stuff like that. You know, that's kind of like the concept that people have. But it's like when you like when I see me talking, I don't, when I see videos of me talking, I'm like, I see how awkward and how like out of tone I sound. Other people don't see it because they, you know, don't know my family, they don't know like my upbringing, but I'm thinking like, damn, compared to like my mom, compared to other people in my family, like I sound very off. Like I don't sound like I think I should sound, you know?
Same with me. Yeah.
It's things like that. So it's very, and then also, and these people that see me acting on a regular basis. So once I get a job, for example, they see all these idiosyncrasies, like all these awkwardness all these awkward behaviors that I have, and they just don't understand. They try to make something out of it. They try to think about all the reasons why I walk like this, why I talk like this, why I act like this, why I go into space and stuff. And they try to come up with all these kinds of reasons. They will never think, oh, that could be autism. You know, that's autism. You know, they don't see it that way. And I think it's just pretty much the lack of awareness in people, and just learning about autism is so complex. It's hard to just explain to people into like short words, or like, oh, autism is this and autism is that. Because at the end of the day, they still think that when they think of autism, they think this is a type of behavior or a type of disorder. So therefore, everyone fitting into this has to act somewhat similar. Plus, they see it as a syndrome too. Most of the time, syndromes tend to be very similar, and that's the reason why. That's the idea in people's heads. But there's definitely a big lack of awareness, and I just don't know why it's still being this way. Why? I don't know. Like, I don't know what would it take for people to finally start getting it. You know, to really be like, okay, I see what you mean, Francesca. I see what you mean. Because now, even when I learned about autism, every time that I would think about autistic people, I would think somebody was like me, or a lot like me and my family, some people that I knew. But now I look into all the people that I know, and now I start seeing like, now I start thinking like a lot of people are autistic. Like I see certain traits or certain odd behaviors of people. I'm thinking, oh my God, could that person be autistic? You know, like now I see it more. So if people would know what I know, I think they will start seeing it as a more like, it's a lot more common than we actually give it credit to.
Thank you, Franch. Thank you for that. I'm sorry, I just have to remind you that the time limit is 3 minutes per question.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
It's all good. You went on for like 10 minutes there, and I really appreciate that. But how about this? When you hit 3 minutes, I can just give you like a thumbs up or something, so you can.
But I can't see
like,
you.
You can't see me?
Yeah, I can't see you.
Okay.
I'll put a timer.
Okay. All right. I really appreciate that though. Thank you. So we're going to move on to the next question here, which is, do you like the idea of an Autism Awareness Month, or would you like that to stop? We can go with Brandon first.
The current Autism Awareness Month is doing absolutely nothing for the autism community. I would argue that it doesn't do anything substantial, anything measurable that I would consider has any merit to it. I think that if we want to have an Autism Awareness Month, it should be more like Autism Action Month, meaning that we actually do something about problems that face us. Because the problems that face us aren't mostly a result of our own behavior, but a result of the discrimination that is against us.
Right.
And this extends beyond employment. This really just goes for any social situation that requires you to kind of assimilate with the community. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything good come from Autism Awareness Month. Mainly, this is just an excuse to donate to churches or organizations that do nothing for the community. Nothing substantial at all. So I personally think it should go. I don't even think the awareness has done anything, even on a kind of psychological way, meaning the current zeitgeist hasn't shifted in terms of how we look at autistic individuals. So I think it should just go. And if we look at what it's dominated by now, it's currently dominated by celebrities and big corporations that don't know a single thing about our community.
Okay. Thank you for that, and I certainly understand where you're coming from. I will say though that I have noticed more neurotypicals holding up like autism acceptance signs during this month and all that. But yeah, I definitely get your side. What do you think of that, Kathy? And basically, how is it different on the other side of the world, basically?
Yeah, it's interesting because we're living in different parts of the world. And I actually spoke to an autistic woman in Europe yesterday, and she was saying, the situation there in Germany, for example, is completely different to Australia, because she's seen in Australia a lot of progress. And I went on national live TV last week or the week before.
Oh, wow.
Because Autism Awareness Month, and thousands and thousands of people. I was on for 5 minutes, but they did give me a platform to talk about this. So I think in Australia, apparently, in comparison, there is an awareness and even getting towards acceptance. And what Brandon said is Autism Action Month. I think that's a much better angle to be going at, and acceptance. In Australia, there is a huge awareness already, but I think, in terms of acceptance and action and, genuine action, I think there's still a way to go. But I think there seems to be differences between countries and the progress. But in Australia, I know there's a lot of research, and in a government support sort of way, there's a lot of support for people with autism in terms of therapy and
Right.
support money, basically. So there is some difference there, but I would say that it would be way better to call it Acceptance or Action Month, as Brandon said.
I absolutely agree. I don't like the idea of Autism Awareness Month per se. I do think it needs I think it needs to have a different name and it needs to have a different message.
And I think there's still not the awareness for girls and women. So I know the awareness has been on and on, but I think in terms of, and there's a lot of non-binary people in the autism community, and that literally never gets spoken about, especially in Australia. And the comorbidities like EDS, like I've got Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, which is, you know, genetic, and that those sorts of things, there are connections between autism and EDS and other things, and that's, nobody in Australia has heard of EDS. Like, it's just
Right.
so there's lots of little bits and pieces that are still, awareness is still needed, but yeah, we're getting somewhere here, it seems, in comparison. But I'm very early in the research of it myself, so yeah, I'm still learning as well.
Thank you for that.
Can I add one more thing, one tiny thing?
Yeah.
So for Autism Awareness Month, which a lot of corporations tend to jump on, how about instead of them spreading awareness, how about you create hiring events and actually hire people? Like,
that's a good
like
idea.
no BSing, no putting commercials out saying that this is what the autism community faces, or we should spread awareness. How about you hire people? That would help.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
I agree with that. What do you think about that, Jim? Autism Awareness Month.
Yes, Autism Awareness Month. Being non-autistic, you know, I see where you guys are coming from. I totally get it. You know, there probably are corporate people just trying to make money and, you know, whatever. But on my end of it, you know, we're living autism awareness and acceptance and all that 24/7. And the more we can, I feel like the more we can get it out there, you know, is it helping or not? You know, I don't know, but I'm going to do my best to get the word out there and to let people know that autism is not a bad thing. We love somebody with autism, and you know what? I would not change JJ for anything in the world. He's the most precious little guy. Give me the dope stick, little dude. And he's trying to play. He's a musical guy, so he finds whatever he can find and start playing. But yeah, I on my end believe that autism awareness, acceptance, and inclusion are important to get out there to the neurotypical people in the world. You know, I don't know, like you said, if it's helping or not. You guys have your perspective on it. On my end, I believe that getting the word out there, to me, it can't hurt anything. You know, I mean, if it flat lines, whatever, but if anything, there's gonna be more and more people learning about it, and you know, they may take their own time to look into it and see what it's all about, and start watching vlogs. You know, there's a lot of people sharing their stories out there in the world, so you know, we're not the only one. There's really good ones out there, and you know, just see what everybody's doing and figure out what they can do to help, instead of, you know, being a burden to autism, you know. So I think, in my opinion, I think it's good.
That's great. And I think it's amazing that we are that there is a neurotypical answering this question, because it's important to understand where you guys come from as well.
Yes.
Like we as people on the spectrum, we feel different things.
Sure.
But
I totally get it. I hear what you guys are all saying, and you know, in a way, I agree with all of it. You know, but
well, I really appreciate your input from like the other side, so to speak.
yeah.
So
JJ, what do you think about Autism Awareness Month? What do you think? Huh? You think we should keep doing it? Yes or no? Yes. Oh, there you go.
All right.
Yeah, keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Awesome. Stephanie, what do you have to say about this?
in regard to like how I feel about the idea, I don't know that, like, as we've been kind of talking about, like, whether it meets a standard or is actually useful, those sorts of things I think are kind of up in the air to an extent. But I do think, like, yes, while autism awareness, acceptance, the whole ordeal, learning about it is, 24/7, the average human being isn't going to be able to think about, care about, and learn about every single whether condition or cause or issue, whatever it is. So I do think that having something on the books that does force people to have a conversation is useful, whether that is 100% meeting the goal that we want yet. Not necessarily, but I do think that even if it's somewhat performative for a lot of people, it does make people stop and they're like, oh, this is on the calendar, this is what we want to do. In regard to the autism action idea, I will say, just as a heads up, there is a group that is comprised mostly of people who like want to cure autism, that we're using that this month. Then again, also, I don't exactly believe like a certain term belongs to certain people, but that's just a thing that it was in my mind when to say it. But I agree with the idea of taking concrete, actionable steps, and unfortunately, I think that does lie on us, as annoying as that is, because people don't quite get it. Because when they're looking at awareness for other stuff, right, they're used to like, let's go do walks and raise money and blah blah blah, and they leave it to the organizations to figure out what you're supposed to do with all that. So if we want to see like hiring events, etc., and unfortunately, it's probably going to be on our end to start those conversations, and say, I would like to partner with you for next year's Autism Awareness, Acceptance, or whatever month, and this is what I'd like to see. And I really think that that would be beneficial to the community, and of course that takes a lot. And so I think that's also part of it too, is unfortunately a lot of people who aren't actually in it don't think of those things. We think of them, but it's often hard to implement that along with all the other things that we're trying to do. So yeah, I don't know, just some thoughts on that. So
Yeah, I like those. I think like reaching out personally to those organizations, I think that would be a big help. Thank you, Stephanie. Ellen, what are your thoughts on this?
There's there's fairly good autism awareness over here in the UK, and I don't think that Autism Awareness Month should be abolished. It should be just improved, and and do more for the autistic community.
Right.
Because if we don't have autism awareness, then it's just like saying that people that take the P out of people with disabilities and that, are right to do that, and they're not, and and don't understand it, whilst they do that as well, and so they need to be educated, and all sorts of stuff like that. I mean, if we got rid of LGBT pride, then that'll be just the homophobes getting big-headed, and
yes,
they've got their way and that they won, and discrimination of any form is right when it's not.
Yeah, definitely no form of discrimination is correct. So a follow-up question to that, Ellen, what are some things that your country does that is good for autism awareness?
It raises money for autistic causes and that. It has marathons and 2K, 4K, and 10K marathons, and that raises money for the UK's National Autistic Aware Society. Yeah.
What have they done though? What have they done with those donations though?
Good question.
because they get a lot of donations, but what do they actually do with them? I know the answer. It's nothing, but
My camera's working now. That's weird.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, I'd like to hear the answer to that, Alan. Because in the U.S. we don't do crap, honestly.
Yeah,
And
I'm aware.
we don't
They
do that, so.
donate to the causes it needs to go to.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, have those donation produced any results? Like, have you seen any results from that money that they're getting?
I haven't personally seen results of it yet so far, but it's probably in the process of happening. You know, the results, that is.
I'm sorry, Alan. We could fix these issues overnight. I hate to break it to you.
Yeah.
So if you're not seeing results, they're not doing crap.
So, Alan, are you in the UK? Sorry, are you in the UK, Alan?
Yeah, I'm in the UK.
Okay, so like if I could help you out there, just because I've heard of some of the things. Well, again, not exactly amazing necessarily, but I have seen certain organizations that do collect money that are, because y'all do a lot with your actual government. We don't really here in the U.S. But I've seen them reach out to some of the autistic YouTubers in the UK to sponsor certain types of messages. I've seen them work with local health areas to bring resources for newly diagnosed people, which is something I think we really need to see here in the US. So while I don't know that they do as much as we'd like, I do believe they do a little bit more maybe than here in the US, but that's just from what I've been hearing.
All right, great topic there, guys. I got a little heated with that one. I gotta settle down. So Franchfries, we're gonna end this off with you. What do you think of Autism Awareness Month?
I'm gonna try to keep it short since I took too long in the other one.
Yeah, I can set a time
Than 3
if you
minutes.
want.
So yeah, I never actually really thought about it. I see really good points being brought up. That's true. Like, you think of autism awareness, and from my point of view, I think like, oh, I want to spread awareness, and I don't want to spread the right type of awareness. But when people hear the word awareness, a lot of people think like, oh yeah, the autism is getting really serious, it's becoming a pandemic at this point. Some people take it like that. So yeah, that word could mean a lot of things. It could be the wrong type of awareness, like be careful, your kids, a lot of things are making kids autistic type of thing. So definitely leaves a lot of room for misinterpretation when you make an awareness month. It should be more like autism acceptance, autism action. It should be something more like that. And definitely, I feel like there should be more, I don't know how does this happen, but there should be like, just how one of the guys, just how the LGBT community became so strong, it should be stronger than that. It should be something that everyone should be aware, because this is not like one of the thousands of disorders that there is in the DSM-5 list. This is something that a lot of people could be born as. You could either be autistic or you could not be autistic, and from there's all these kinds of variation. You can be heterosexual and be autistic, you can be homosexual and be autistic, you can even have Down syndrome and be autistic. So there's all kinds of autistics, so that's something that I feel like the government should have. One of the biggest the number one media where the one that most people watches should have a section for it. In school there should be like an annual meeting of something, of like maybe bringing a different every school should have like somebody that would come to schools and talk about the importance of autism acceptance, and bring some good, well recognized activists, or just somebody that will represent the community and as well accepted in the community. So that's something that should be being taught in every school. Like, it's crazy how like teachers get their little like autistic meeting supposedly once a year or once every I don't know when, and they still don't get it. Like, Like, I have a teacher now that is autistic, and yeah, she still doesn't see me as an autistic person. She would see somebody autistic who fits only the stereotype. So the problem. You know, there's no real understanding of autism.
Thank you, Franch. Thank you very much. That's a really good point. Like, we have the range is so broad. How are we going to truly represent it by ourselves?
Yeah.
And the fact is, we're not. We have to have someone from like every single point on that spectrum. And that's really hard. But that's kind of why I do these collabs and all that, so like people can get as much diversity as they can.
That's great.
All right, final question here, then we're gonna wrap it up. This is going quicker than I thought, partially because 4 people didn't show up, but hey, we did the best we could.
I did the talking for them.
All right, sounds good. Final question: how is your pre-diagnosis experience with society, and how did that change after your diagnosis? So Jim, I don't know how you'll be able to answer this one, but we'll try our best. But Brandon, you can go.
Yeah, before I was diagnosed as a neurotypical.
No.
No, I'm just kidding. Go on. I'll mute.
Bonnie.
I'll mute.
Welcome to the ASPE YouTube Collab Comedy Hour. Anyway.
I would say that nothing materially changed. I don't want to use the word scapegoat because I don't think that's necessarily a good word, but I was able to understand things a bit more. But in terms of how things changed, I wouldn't say that things necessarily changed. My difficulties that I faced still remained the same before and after, which was back when I was diagnosed at 16. I'm 21 now, so it's been 5 years. So I wouldn't say that anything's really materially changed. I actually, maybe I would even argue that things have gone maybe a bit worse, because when I tell people that I'm diagnosed with autism, their entire approach to me changes, right? Meaning that, like, for example, when I worked at a bank, I told my boss that, and her voice changed. It was vile. Like she treat me like I was a child almost. Like her voice changed, like she was talking to a little child.
Yeah.
And that almost set me off at the time. I kind of wanted to just get out of my face. I don't want to talk to you anymore, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people do that. A surprising amount of people do that. I mean, I told someone I was at my uncle's place, and I told someone about that, and the result of that was kind of this person like sitting down and like shaking their head a lot and be like, like they think we don't notice it, but we do. It's so obvious. And it's so frustrating. So I feel like if I just didn't know, I would argue things might go better for me, because once I tell people, because I'm aware of it, people change. It's the most insane response to letting people that you let people know that you're diagnosed with autism, and it's really frustrating. So I would argue things got worse, not in every aspect, but in that aspect for sure.
Absolutely understandable. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. What about you, Kathy? What was your experience?
Well, I was diagnosed when I was 35. So I grew up in many decades of not knowing, and I don't think that was not a good thing for me. I made a lot of mistakes, like in the 20-something, like Brandon's mentioning he's 21. That's a difficult age for anyone. But when I was not diagnosed and I was growing up in my 20s without knowing, I just had a lot of problems with employment, with relationships and stuff like that. So at 35, when I found out, I kind of went back through my history and made sense of my life. And I think the last 10 years have been a lot clearer. I know how to help myself. I got a lot of sensory problems. So I found things to help with that. And in Australia, you do get funding. Autistic people do get some funding sometimes. So you get some help there if you've got a diagnosis. So especially in this country, it is good to get a diagnosis because then you can get assistance. But it is the point that Brandon's making is if you do tell people, they do treat you like you're 5 years old and stuff like that. So there is that problem. But for me, the benefits of being able to help myself and figure out who I am and how I can do things in the world better has been good for me. And I've when I dropped off a lot of fake friends and a lot of people that were mean to me and bullies and that kind of stuff, and found friends in the community, that are nice people, and some autistic people and some neurotypical people that are just understanding and more compassionate. And that's been really good for me in terms of making friends and stuff.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, it's important to associate with compassionate people. And I think like if you are your true self, then that's going to happen because people will understand that you have a disability and like still love you and still be there for you despite of that. And there are a lot of people like that. So I encourage everyone to go after that. What's that, Kathy?
I was just saying, like, people that are struggling as adults with autism, autistic people, to find your tribe and find compassionate people that won't be condescending, but will just accept you as you are and be your friend on an equal thing, and not be you down and stuff like that. Yeah, I know how important that is.
Definitely. Thank you, Kathy. So Jim, maybe you could tell a bit of JJ's story and like what that process has been.
Okay, well, when he was young, when he got to be like 1.5, 2, he was like, he had hypertension. I mean, he'd just run around. You try to talk to him and he wouldn't answer you back. Like he couldn't, he couldn't communicate with you at all. And he would be doing a lot of rocking, a lot of stuff with his hands and his eyes, and so we thought, we got to get him looked at. And at age 3, we got the diagnosis of autism with disruptive behavior. So since then, we didn't know anything about autism, you know what I mean? So again, we had to educate ourselves pretty much and find out what autism was, and got therapy. Since then, I mean, he's had tons of therapies and medicines. Lately, I mean, just recently, this year actually, he started taking a bunch of like vitamins and minerals and supplements, as well as some sleep medicine to help him, because he would never sleep. He'd be up all night and not sleep. So when school comes, he was grouchy, he didn't want to, he'd fight us getting on the bus. And plus this year we got him out of public school, which was kind of a gift for us, because at the time the school was pretty much said they didn't want him there anymore. They couldn't handle him. And he's been going to that school since kindergarten. And, we really felt kind of hurt about it at first. Right. Like, oh my gosh. So we started looking at the schools, and the school that we chose for him has been so unbelievable for him. He loves it. They've got all the therapies there. It's a private school. They've got he's got music therapy he had today, and he's got like all the speech and occupational therapies. He's going to have, what do you call it? Aquatics there too. So they have a pool, and he loves to swim. So that is awesome. His behaviors have just turned around. It's so unbelievable for us. We're very grateful, thankful that it's, that we've been guided in the right direction to help him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And of course, Trisha, without her, we'd be lost, because it's basically just me, Shelly, and we have Trisha to help with him. She does a lot of HAB and a lot of respite stuff, and she used to be his teacher in the regular public school. So yeah, and she wanted moving out of the public school herself. So everything's going in the right direction for JJ. his more of his loving and happy side is coming out more than the aggressive side. So we're very happy about that.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And,
it was a rough diagnosis to, you know, when you didn't know really what it was. And there's still going to be a lot of people out there, unless you get thrown right into the middle of it, you know, you don't really know what it is. And, you know, for me, I'd be like looking at, which was stupid, you know, like searching and come up with YouTube videos, kids just screaming and just hitting and hurting themselves, thinking like, oh my gosh, that's going to be my boy, you know. But yeah, in ways he does do that stuff, but there's the loving side of him that makes the whole journey with him totally worth it. He's just a sweet boy, a sweet, beautiful boy, and we love him with all of our heart. We don't want him to change. We love him the way he is.
Well, I wish a lot more people had that mentality.
I saw I didn't get a thumbs up or, you know, over 3 minutes. I didn't go over my 3 minutes, I guess, right?
Nope, you had 20 seconds.
Okay.
But you know what? I mean, things like this, like we can go a little over because this is so important to hear.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And we're just very grateful how he is. He's just a sweetheart, you know.
Yeah.
And it's funny, when we first started the blog, which was in January last year, and you could just see, looking at the videos, how much he's changed between then and now.
Okay.
Just like unbelievable change, you know, in him.
And
who knows what the future holds.
Oh, I'm sorry, what were we saying, Franch?
I just want to say that to Jim, that I think your son is very lucky to have parents like you guys, a dad like you, that is supportive, that you're going, you know, you went the extra mile to try to, you know, find a solution to accommodate your kid, to give him the love and support that he needed, versus other parents that they just look at all the negative sides and they just complain, and, you know, and they just mistreat their kids instead.
Right. And I don't, and you know, I'm a dad, and I've always done this before the blog, you know, is just take them places, you know, do things with them instead of just sitting around the house. Go out and swing, you know, or whatever. I take them out, you know, take them out to restaurants and to amusement parks and zoos and, you know, just whatever, give him all kinds of experiences, and he loves it.
You said it makes you feel young again, right?
There you go. Yeah, I didn't mention that.
Young.
I'm kind of an older dad, you know, so he does keep me young. Yes, that's why, you know, I'm not even gray, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be a teacher, and like being around all those fifth graders, I'm gonna be 80 and have brown hair. Like, it's gonna be nuts.
That's awesome.
All right, so what do you think about this, Stephanie?
I think most of it has been like my interaction rather than like society's interaction or whatnot, if that makes sense. So like, because before I was diagnosed, it was definitely like something's broken, I guess. Like, some part of me is broken and I don't understand, and I felt like I was stuck. And like, if I don't know, it was weird because I'd always been considered like more mature than other people, but then at some point it's like everybody else who I viewed as generally immature were like really, really good at social stuff. Like, they handled themselves really well, and I didn't understand why I wasn't like getting there like I was supposed to. And so I just like imagined that like one day, you know, because everyone, when I would talk about like why I felt different, or how I felt like, I don't know, not like everybody else, I would get met with like, oh, you know, everyone's awkward at this age. So like in my head, you know, I hit, you know, 18 or I hit 20 and I should be like everyone else, and that wasn't happening. So
like, we all have that middle school weirdness going on, but that should be over soon. No.
Yeah. And then it was never over.
And then it just keeps going and going.
Yeah. So I think after diagnosis, it helped me to not like be real concerned about what other people thought. Because at first for a while it was definitely like, how do I, because I would apologize for my existence all the time. because I was just doing something wrong, and a lot of people were nice around me. Other people would say things like, "Oh, you know, we're all weird," like so. After having diagnosis, I don't really think I care that much about what other people around me think, because I understand now. Like, I know for me, and if you don't get it, that's kind of your fault. But I have definitely experienced issues with people talking like I'm a child, or treating me like I'm a child when they give me like work. At first, I think they just thought I was just full of myself when I said that I was autistic. I just wanted to let them know, because I stim very openly when in certain situations. And then after that, all of a sudden, everyone was treating me like, oh, are you okay? Like, let me know if you need a break. And like talking to me like that. I'm like, oh my God, like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
So there's definitely that. But I will say I'm very glad to have my diagnosis during college, because it gives me kind of a safety. So like, because when I was younger, like if there's something going on, like I have to figure out how to control it. And if I need to leave, like I feel like I did something bad, right? Like to have to get a hold of the teacher and like ask for permission to leave and stuff like that. Like that whole
Exactly,
process,
yep.
very anxiety inducing. So like knowing that like inherently I am allowed, like I know I have the right to leave if I need to leave. I have the right to do these things if I need to. Just having that in place for me has really reduced my anxiety, just like in classroom at my college. So yeah, I think that is everything. I just like blurt everything out and we'll be fine.
Nope. That was fantastic. Yeah, thank you for that and sharing that experience. Alan, what are your final thoughts on this?
Well, I guess it's just a case of, you know, people understanding and.
I'm sorry, would you mind speaking up a bit? I'm having.
It's about people needing to be educated better and understanding better, you know, the whole,
Yeah.
what autism is about and all that, you know, and obviously get rid of the ignorance towards autism and that and disabilities, the same way that we get rid of ignorance towards sexuality differences and stuff like that, you know.
Right. But well, it was so like, how was your pre-diagnosis experience with society, and how did that change after your diagnosis?
Yeah. Well, I had a whole childhood where I was not diagnosed with autism, and in the UK back in the 1980s, there, you know, autism diagnoses and that were not heard of, you know, and so I was diagnosed with learning disabilities, and you know, and that did not help my life at the time. And you know, that diagnosis, well, I still have learning disabilities. I have both autism and learning disability apparently, so
yeah, that's it.
I was not diagnosed with the other, you know.
Yeah, the comorbidity in that is very high. That's what I've tended to notice. Well, thank you for sharing that. And basically, like, how did that change after the diagnosis? Like, were you able to have a different attitude, a different mentality?
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah.
How so?
Sort of like being more careful who I choose and that for relationships and simple stuff like that, and find it more easier to interact with people and stuff like that, you know, and people didn't quite understand, you know, back in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, the 80s had to be really tough because, like, autism had only been around for like what, 40 years. And we're not going to get into the history of how that started, but it was a very new thing in the 1980s. So I totally get that. I mean, I was diagnosed in 2003, and everyone was so confused with what that was. And even when I found out in 2012, it was just like Jim said, like, we had so little representation, right, Jim? 2012. Yeah. So it was a rough couple of years for me. And then in like 2020, I started to get really invested in what I had and like learning about it. And then I found most of you guys actually. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Franch, you have the floor. Well, how was your pre-diagnosis experience, and how did that change after your diagnosis?
Well, I guess I go more into detail on my channel, but I guess to summarize it pretty much, I was self-diagnosed, so I got like an official diagnosis in college. But before that, the second I found out about what used to be known as Asperger's syndrome, which like every single trait of the characteristics what defined Asperger's syndrome would literally describe me. So when I learned about it, I was like, oh, so pretty much not to get ahead of myself. So before that, I always, me and everybody that knew me would always, compare me to these TV characters that were very unique, very different, very clumsy, which now that I look into, these characters are 100% based on an autistic character. But yeah, I was always compared to these characters a lot. And I don't know, for those who watch this, they might know it's a Spanish.
I'm sorry, Dan, what were some examples? Like, what are some examples of characters?
Yeah, so I want to mention the name because some people might know them because they became kind of like world famous, well, at least in the US famous. But it was a Spanish characters called El Chavo del Ocho. So I used to be called that a lot. So it's kind of like Chavo del Ocho, kind of like a kid version of, for example, Michael from The Office, kind of like he was
yeah.
So it was just a very clumsy, very, type of character. So I'll be compared to him a lot. They would always call me that. And my everyone that knew me, family, peers, everyone would always say like, oh, Francesca, like there's only these kinds of things always happen to you. Or you're just so like, such a, like they even started making like, they couldn't even know what to call me. So they'd be like, oh, that's such a Francesca moment type of thing. They would say to me a lot. Yes. And so yeah, like I'm just kind of like always all over the place, and I would always stand out everywhere I went. In my classroom, there was no other kid. Like I'm sure there was other autistic kids in my classroom, but I think those were more like less hyper than me and less intense. So maybe there was a couple that were intense, so maybe those were autistic too. I just thought they were just troublemaker kids, but. Anyways, from the girls, I was the troublemaker kid. Like I wasn't a bad kid, but I would just get in trouble for the most odd types of things, So I would always stand a lot of attention. Teachers would always call my parents every single year, every single time. Like always, my mom was tired of getting called by teachers. And even as an adult in college, I still ended up somehow in the principal's office. Like I ended up in college, you call it the dean. The dean, yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you have the same brain. What?
Yes, in every single college, my mom looks at me. She was like, Francesca, you're like a grown ass adult. Why am I still being called by the dean even in college? Like, why is this happening? So it's one of those things, just an operator. So before my self-diagnosis, I always felt I was very odd, and I thought like I was just kind of like a unique type of character. That's all I could think of myself as. Mom would sometimes compare like, well, Einstein used to be very unique, and she will say things like that. And I'd be like, okay, I guess, I was seen as a good thing. I actually like being different. I didn't like calling bad attention, but I didn't like being like everyone else. So I like being different. I never felt like it was a bad thing. What I didn't like was the fact that as I got, like I knew how to be a kid, but as you become teenager, you start realizing that kids start changing the way they talk, the way they approach social situations. And I did it. Like I will still talk like a little kid. So, or, answer like a little kid. So I started noticing that people will start speaking in double sense and all those things. So I just realized that I was just way behind on social things. Like I was always a few years behind on everything. I was a lot more mature than all of my peers, especially girls, That's when I started getting a lot more with boys than with girls, because
Mm,
I just realized that as I got older, the difference between me and my peers just started getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
right.
So I felt had a lot of trouble trying to, fit in a lot, and that come up with a lot of things, started developing depression and everything. So when we moved to the US, that's when I first learned about ADHD, and
Yeah.
that's something that in Mexico wasn't really known. It was more known in the US. So when I first heard about that, that's when we're like, oh, well, that's why you're like this, you're ADHD.
Makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when I'm like, oh, okay, so that's why I'm like this, and it just kind of helped me kind of realize, like, okay, why I have problems with deficit of attention and stuff like that. But then my mom just kind of like, because I was going through a really deep depression, I just was trying to figure out like what was so wrong with me. So she started looking into, actually have a video, a quick interview on my Instagram about this with my mom. If you guys want to see them.
Hey, Franch, I'm really sorry, but you're at 5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes already?
Yeah, I was trying to give you the thumbs up. But
Oh, okay. Well, just to wrap it up, pretty much, I guess before I just felt like I was just very, I just wouldn't understand what was so wrong about me,
Right.
And then after diagnosis, it just helped me kind of like make a lot of sense out of things. Just kind of realize like, okay, no wonder, no wonder I'm like this. No wonder everything is just learning about every aspect of my life, sensory, all those things, just kind of like it all. I felt, I can't describe the words, but I felt a sense of like, wow, like of just, it all made sense, a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I agree with Brandon with what he said, that when you went and I was thinking like, oh, I'm gonna tell the whole world that this is what I am, they'll understand, and they didn't. The entire world did not understand what it was,
Fair enough.
and that
Yeah.
was one of the biggest. To this day, I face that, and that's why I wanted to do my channel.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate it. And I'm glad, it made a lot more sense to you after, and you were able to find at least some sort of peace of mind.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate this. I really hope you guys can come on for the next one. It's going to be third Wednesday of May at 6 p.m. Eastern time.
Well, thank you for inviting.
You're well. Thank you. Thank you for coming on, Jim. You had a lot to say. Everyone had a lot of great things to say. So with that being said, I'm Alex's Autism Acceptance Channel, and I am out.